Chapter 40. The Tears. Arielleth embroidered without seeing. The needle moved on its own while her mind circled endlessly around Draven's words. What had he meant by that enigmatic, "You will not remain a prisoner much longer"? She knew the confrontation was inevitable. And she was honest enough to admit, at least to herself, that she was fleeing like a coward from the one man whose answer she truly feared. The door flew open. A scyther burst into the room, pale, trembling like someone one breath away from tears. Arielleth jumped to her feet. "Who has upset you like this?" she asked, already convinced the culprit was Draven. A scyther broke down, unable to hold back her sobs. Arielleth quickly closed the door, and wrapped an arm around her shoulders, guiding her to a chair. "Sit down. Breathe. What could possibly be so terrible?" she whispered, afraid of being wrong. "Tell me what's happening, and I'll find a way to fix it." A scyther nodded, but when she looked at Arielleth, she dissolved into tears again. Arielleth sat down across from her, ready to wait as long as it took. "Your brother has sent men to look for you," she finally managed. "Draven let the messengers in. That's why he ordered you back to your room. He didn't want them to see you." "Why?" "Everyone knows I'm his prisoner." "Morhollow." "You don't understand," Isaitha interrupted, choking on a sob. "Emric told Garin that Draven didn't want the messengers to see how well you've been treated." She wiped her eyes with the edge of her dress. You think you've been treated well, don't you?" "Good heavens, is that why you're crying?" "Of course they've treated me well." "Look around," Arielleth replied with a gentle, almost sad smile. "Doesn't this room seem welcoming to you?" "I shouldn't have listened, but I did. No one saw me, I swear. Draven, Emric and Garin were all there, and they heard every word." "Were the messengers sent by the king, or by my brother?" Arielleth asked. Fear drove a spike into her chest, but she could not let Isaitha see it. The girl depended on her steadiness. "I don't know. I didn't hear the beginning." "Tell me what you did hear." Isaitha took a deep breath. "You must present yourself at court. Immediately. The messenger said they believe you have been dishonored." Her voice broke. Arielleth bit her lip until she felt nothing. She had to restrain the urge to shake her and force her to finish. "And you must marry as soon as you arrive in London." "I see," Arielleth whispered. "We knew it. Morhollow would never let me escape." "Did they mention whom I'm to marry?" "Rendgar," Isaitha replied and hid her face in her hands. The world seemed to tilt. For an instant, Arielleth thought she might faint. "And Draven?" she asked, barely audible. "What did he say? Did he agree?" "He said nothing." The messengers delivered their message, and left with the troops waiting outside. "How many soldiers has Morhollow brought?" "I don't know." As soon as they left, Emric and Garin began shouting at each other. Draven didn't open his mouth. He just stood by the fire, his hands behind his back. "He's distancing himself," Arielleth murmured. "Though I don't know why." "Emric doesn't want to send you back to Morhollow," Isaitha replied. "Emric is defending me." "Yes. He suggested sending me to Arielleth, so all this tension wouldn't affect me. But I don't want to go. Arielleth is much older, and her husband is so strange." Arielleth rose slowly and opened the shutters. Cold air struck her face, helping her contain the storm beginning to burn inside. "You know, Isaitha." Spartan children were torn from their mothers' arms and sent to the fields to train. They were taught to steal. Deceit was a virtue. "What are you saying?" "How can you tell stories now?" Arielleth turned around. Tears shone on her cheeks. Isaitha had never seen her cry. "Ancient stories set my heart in order. When the mind grows quiet, I can think. And only then do I know which path to take." Isaitha nodded, shaken. Arielleth turned her gaze back to the window. The hill stood outlined against the night, and for a moment she thought of the wolf she had left out there. Then one image overlaid the other, the wolf and Draven, both in need of care that no one else seemed willing to give. And she did not know why she felt that irrational urge to bring order to that man's devastated life. But she felt it. And each day more strongly. "My uncle and I used to play by the fire every night," she murmured. "I on the psaltery, he on the cello. In those moments I was happy, a scyther. Truly happy. Weren't there other young people? You always talk about old men." "We lived on the Wintermere estate. Baron Stonereach was very old. So were Father Roderick and Father Samoyne. They all lived in harmony, and I played chess with the Baron. Sometimes I cheated, but my uncle said it wasn't a sin, just an old man's stubbornness." Silence spread between them, a scyther staring at the fire, Arielleth at the dark horizon. But this time the silence did not calm her. The calm shattered, and in its place rose a serene, dangerous fury. "You need someone to protect you," a scyther whispered. "If I return to Morhollow, my plans are over. I wanted to go to Scotland. Merowyn would have taken me in." "Arielleth, Scotland is where? What does it matter? Morhollow will kill me. And if he doesn't, Rengar will," she laughed bitterly, a sound that chilled a scyther. "I never thought Morhollow would move heaven and earth for me. When he pursued Draven, I thought he only wanted him dead. Now he sends men for me. I don't understand any of it." She spun toward the door. "Arielleth, you can't leave. Draven hasn't given you permission." "I need a protector, don't I?" she shot back beside herself. "Then Draven is the only one who will do." "What are you going to do?" "Give your brother instructions," she declared with a determination that allowed no argument. "He is going to refuse Morhollow's men." And she left the room before a scyther could stop her. The girl ran after her. "Arielleth, do you really think you can give my brother orders?" "Yes," she cried from the staircase. A scyther sank onto the steps, stunned by that sudden burst of courage, or madness. She watched Arielleth's figure descend the stone spiral, her loose hair like a flame in the gloom. And only when she vanished to the level below did she understand that she had to follow her. No matter how terrible it might be to face Draven, she would not allow Arielleth to do it alone. Chapter 41. His captive, and the woman who changed his world. Arielleth reached the threshold of the great hall with her pulse racing. She paused for a moment to catch her breath. Emric and Garin sat facing one another, like two warriors on the brink of an irrevocable decision. Draven, his back to the door, stood rigid before the fire, a silhouette cut by the flames, as motionless as a Celtic statue carved from iron and silence. Emric finished speaking just as she entered, and she caught only the end of his sentence. "So then, are we agreed that Draven will take her?" Arielleth needed no more to imagine the rest. In her mind, they were already handing her over to Morhollow's men. "I am not going anywhere," she declared. The words fell like a stone into a still pond. Draven turned slowly, looked at her long and deeply, and then returned his gaze to his brothers. Garin sketched a recklessly amused smile. Emric, true to his nature, darkened like a storm cloud heavy with omen. Draven showed nothing. Nothing at all. Arielleth lifted her skirt slightly, and advanced toward him with the taut serenity of a queen about to pass judgment. "You chose to capture me, Draven," she said. "But now I have something to say to you. I will remain a prisoner. I trust I have made myself clear." For an instant she thought she saw surprise in his eyes. And perhaps disbelief as well. Or perhaps it was she, trembling, who saw things that were not there. "You are trapped with me," she added, trying not to let her voice shatter under its own fragility. The crash of Emric leaping to his feet made her turn. The bench clattered to the floor amid curses. Arielleth strode toward him, hands on her hips. "Wipe that shadow off your face, Emric, or I swear by God I'll slap it off myself." Garin stared at her, mouth agape. He had never seen her burn like this. He had thought she feared being sent back to Morhollow, poor creature, if only he knew. The situation struck him as so absurd, so unexpected, that he ended up laughing despite himself. Arielleth spun on him like a hawk that has sighted prey. "Do you find this amusing, Garin?" He foolishly nodded. The motion nearly cost him his nose. Arielleth hurled a beer jug that whistled past an inch from his ear. When she grabbed another, Emric hurried to seize her arm. They collided at the edge of the dais, and Arielleth, without thinking, shoved him with her hip. Emric fell backward, awkwardly tangled between the bench and his own legs. She ignored him and turned back to Garin. "Do not laugh at me again." "Arielleth, come here," Draven ordered, leaning with feigned laziness against the hearth's mantle, as though the scene bored him more than the weather. And Arielleth obeyed. She walked halfway across the hall, before realizing what she was doing. She stopped short. "I will take no more orders from you, Draven. You cannot give me any. I am your prisoner, yes, but not your puppet. Kill me if you wish, I prefer it to returning to Morhollow." She felt her nails digging into her palms. She felt herself breaking inside. He did not look away. "Emric. Garin. Leave us. Take our sister." A scyther appeared from behind a column, tearful and trembling. "I want to stay, Draven. In case Arielleth needs." "Go with them," he cut in, cold as newly tempered steel. "If you want me to stay." A scyther whispered toward Arielleth, but Garin was already leading her away by the arm. "Do not contradict your brother," Arielleth said, though a surge of anger swept through her when she saw the girl burst into tears again. She stepped closer and gave her an awkward pat on the shoulder. Smiling was impossible. "I am not going to marry Rengar," she declared. "In fact, I am not going to marry anyone." "Oh yes you will," Draven replied, with a calm smile that struck like a blow. Arielleth stepped back, indignant, confused. "Not Rengar." "No. Not him," Draven conceded. That unsettled her enough to still the storm raging inside. Draven turned his gaze to his brothers. Hearing him speak, they pretended to make for the door, with the slow reluctance of men who want to hear every last syllable in the world. He let out a weary growl. Arielleth thought that even this detail was her fault. Since her arrival, she had churned that castle like an autumn wind, tearing away leaves, certainties and habits. And Draven endured it with the patience of a man who knows the storm must yet grow before it breaks. "Emric, bring the new priest," he ordered. Emric's eyes widened, uncertain. "Now Draven finished?" Arielleth was about to protest, when Draven said, without even looking at her, "Do not even think of advising him to contradict me, Arielleth, or by God I will drag you by that hair of yours," he said, "and use it to silence your protests." Arielleth let out an offended gasp. Draven counted it a fleeting victory. He wanted to break her fury before what was to come. But she advanced on him, with a look that would have made a king retreat. "How dare you? My hair is not red," she burst out. "It is chestnut. Chestnut. Red brings bad fortune and you know it." He blinked. For a moment, he thought the woman was mad. With hundreds of Morhollow's men camped outside, demanding her surrender at dawn, she was arguing about the color of her hair. "You have no shame," Arielleth went on before breaking into tears. She could not hold his gaze, and perhaps that was why she collapsed into his arms when he wrapped her in a grip as firm as it was unexpected. "You will not return to Morhollow," Draven said hoarsely. "Then I will stay until spring." Emric returned with the new priest. "Father Brandolf is here." The cleric was young, too young, with a face marked by scars and a restless air. Arielleth looked at him for a moment, unable to place where she thought she had seen him before. Draven held her by the shoulder, keeping her close to the fire as though he needed its warmth to steady his own decisions. Strangely, she felt his presence give her back something like calm. At that moment, Garin burst in, red as a cherry at the height of summer. "Draven, I will be the one to marry Lady Arielleth," he declared. "If it is a sacrifice, I accept it." Draven raised an eyebrow. Garin went on, visibly nervous. She saved my life. Draven understood at once. Garin had always been transparent. He believed himself to be in love with her. You will not argue this, Garin. I have already decided. And you will honor my decision. Garin growled, frustrated, and shook his head. I will not defy you. Marriage. Arielleth could barely utter the word. It came out like a cursed whisper. Then she shouted. Sacrifice. Chapter 42. When protecting her became his greatest triumph, Arielleth would have liked to scream, I will not marry anyone, but her voice broke before it could be born. Understanding, sudden and cruel, fell upon her like a slab of stone. Now she knew with absolute clarity what Draven intended. Garin might accept not to oppose him, but she had no intention of yielding. Draven, however, advanced with stony determination. He ignored Arielleth's attempts to break free. He kept her at his side, and guided her toward the priest to begin the ceremony. Father Brandolf trembled so violently that he seemed to have forgotten even the most basic words of the rite. Arielleth, seething, barely noticed him. All her fury was directed at the man who held her with iron firmness. She shook her head violently when she heard Draven pronounce his vow. And when the priest asked whether she accepted that man as her husband, her answer came without hesitation. No. I do not want him. Draven did not seem to care. He tightened his grip even more, in an embrace so crushing that she feared she might hear her own bones crack. He seized a fistful of her hair, forcing her to lift her gaze to his. Answer again, Arielleth, he ordered. And in his eyes burned an intensity capable of bending mountains. Release me first, she demanded, with a tremor born not of fear but of pure indignation. Draven, convinced she would eventually obey, loosened his hold. He did not let her go, but he relaxed his arm around her shoulders. Ask her again, he instructed the exhausted priest. Father Brandolf looked on the verge of fainting. He repeated the question in a stammer. Arielleth remained silent. She said neither yes nor no. It did not matter how long they stood there, nor how many times they asked the same question. No one could force her to yield to such a farce. But she had not counted on Garin. When she saw him step forward, her blood turned to ice. His hand rested on the hilt of his sword, and Arielleth thought, horrified, that he was about to attack his own brother. All right, she whispered, afraid of provoking bloodshed. I accept you as my husband. She kept her eyes on Garin, saw his doubt, his rage, his pain. Of my own free will, she added, because she feared what he might do if she did not say it. Garin lowered his hand. Relief washed over her like a warm tide. A scyther stepped forward and placed herself between Emmerich and his younger brother, smiling at Arielleth with a tenderness that only made her feel more exposed. Even Emmerich let out a laugh. Arielleth wanted to scream at them all, but the lost gleam in Garin's eyes stopped her. The priest, seeing that he had survived the ordeal, hastened to conclude the rite. He muttered a clumsy, hurried blessing, and fled the hall as fast as his legs could carry him. He was so pale he looked ill. Arielleth understood perfectly. Draven was capable of inspiring fear in anyone. At last he released her. She stepped away a few paces, pacing in circles like a cornered animal. This marriage is a farce, she burbled low enough that Garin would not hear. That priest did not even bless us properly. Draven had the audacity to smile. You told me you never made mistakes, Draven, she replied, holding back a tremor, but you have just committed a monumental one. You have ruined your life. For what? To continue an endless vendetta against my brother. Arielleth, he answered, firm as a wall, the marriage is valid. Now go to my bedchamber and wait for me there, wife. I will come shortly. He hammered the word wife like a blow. Arielleth stood frozen, stunned, staring into the fire reflected in his eyes like embers. His bedchamber. She flinched when a scyther touched her shoulders to whisper that everything would be all right. Easy to say, Arielleth thought, when it was not she who had just been offered to a wolf. She needed to get away. She needed to think. Holding her tunic between her fingers, she walked toward the exit. Emmerich stopped her just before she crossed the threshold. "Allow me to welcome you to our family," he said, with a gravity that enraged her as much as his twisted smile. "Do not dare smile at me, Emmerich, or I will smash my fist into your mouth," she warned. And the shock that lit his face gave her a strange sense of relief. "If I recall correctly," Emmerich replied, amused, "you have already promised to strike me, for the opposite reason." She had no idea what in the devil he meant, nor did she care. She shook off his grip and wished him, under her breath, to choke on his supper before striding out of the hall. Garin tried to follow her, but Emmerich held him back. "She is our brother's wife now, Garin. Respect her bond." He spoke in a low voice, aware of Draven, who stood with his back turned, his gaze fixed on the fire. "I could make her happier," Garin insisted. "She has suffered so much, she deserves a little peace." "Are you blind?" Emmerich murmured. "Have you not seen how she looks at him? And how he looks at her? They are in love." "You are wrong. Arielleth hates Draven." "Arielleth hates no one." "She cannot," Emmerich smiled. "And you do not want to see the truth. Why do you think he was so furious with her? By the gods, I knew it from the start. When she was ill, Draven never left her bedside for a moment. Because he felt responsible. No. Because he loved her, even if he does not yet understand it himself." Garin lowered his head, defeated. But Draven was no longer listening. His thoughts were far away. The messengers had warned that they would attack at dawn if Arielleth was not delivered, but he knew it was a ruse. He wished it were not. He would have welcomed any battle against Morhollow's men. Satisfied with his conclusion, he set those matters aside and thought of his wife. How long would it take her to accept it? He told himself it did not matter, though he knew that the sooner the better for both of them. He had decided to protect her. Arielleth had restored a courage he believed lost. He could not abandon her. "Damn it," he muttered to himself, "from the very first moment I knew I would not let her go." She disarmed him. She tore down every wall. She stirred emotions he thought long extinguished. And, save for the moments when he wanted to strangle her, all he could think of was kissing her. Morhollow had nothing to do with it. Arielleth was pure goodness, tenacious tenderness, a heart capable of defying his own cynicism. He smiled, imagining how he would find her in the bedchamber. A frightened kitten, or the tigress who had set his life ablaze. He went in search of Faramond, gave instructions for the night watch, and plunged into the icy lake for his habitual bath. He granted his wife a little more time. An hour later, he decided to go up. It would not be easy to persuade her to give herself to him. He would not force her, never. He wanted it to be she who desired him. That resolve shattered the moment he entered the bedchamber, and found it empty. Exasperated, he climbed the tower. He smiled at the thought that she believed she could hide from him. But the smile vanished when he tested the door and found it barred. Arielleth, prey to nerves, had returned to the chamber almost trembling. She waited while Morwenna filled the bath. It took an eternity, a torment thinking that Draven might arrive before she had time to secure the door. Fortunately, the beam was still where she had hidden it days before. Sliding it into the iron ring took all her strength, but when she managed it, she let out a shaky breath. Nothing managed to calm her. Had he taken her as his wife, only to defy Morhollow? What would happen now to Lady Morwenna? She bathed, finding no comfort. When she heard footsteps climbing the stairs, she rose from the tub with her heart in her throat. As she reached for the tunic, she saw that her hands were trembling, perhaps from the cold, she told herself. The footsteps stopped. He was just on the other side. Fear pierced her. Ashamed of her own cowardice, she ran to the farthest corner. She fumbled with the cord at her waist. He could not see her. There was no reason to tremble like this. "Arielleth," Draven said, "step away from the door." The softness of his voice startled her more than a shout. She did not understand why he wanted her to move. She did not understand anything. Her heart pounded like a Celtic drum in the middle of the night. Chapter 43. He guarded his love, as if it were a kingdom. The answer came like a thunderclap. The crash was so brutal that Arielleth leapt backward, and struck her head against the wall. A moan escaped her lips as she watched the door's crossbar give way like a dry branch. She could not even cross herself, her hands were clenched together in pure terror. The wood exploded into splinters, and Draven tore the remains of the frame away as if they were strands of wool. He was going to drag her to his chambers, she knew it, but when he saw her curled up in the corner, trembling like a fawn, something in him softened. An absurd, savage thought struck him. What if, seized by panic, she tried to throw herself out the window before he could stop her? She was so frightened she might actually do it. Draven did not wish to terrify her. He let out a long, almost theatrical sigh, and calmly leaned against the shattered doorframe. He offered her a smile meant to give her back her breath, to remind her that he was not her enemy, even if his entrance had been worthy of one. He tried to win her over with gentle words, to persuade her with reason. But she suddenly changed. She stepped out of her refuge in the corner, and walked to the center of the chamber with unexpected dignity, her eyes bright, nothing like someone about to hurl herself into the void. "You could have knocked, Draven," she murmured, more irritated than afraid. He suppressed a laugh, knowing how much it meant to her to defend her pride even in such chaos. He did not want to see her shrink before him, he preferred her courage. "And would you have opened the door, my wife?" he asked in a low, almost silken voice. "Do not call me your wife. I was forced to speak my vows. And look what you have done to my door, now I will sleep in drafts thanks to your arrogance." "So you did intend to open it?" Draven laughed, delighted by the fury she was trying to hide. Emric was right, Arielleth was stubborn as an oak, and nearly as resilient as that door. She was a delight to behold. Her disheveled hair fell in a cascade over her shoulders, and the firelight kindled red tones in her mane. With her hands on her hips and her back straight as a spear, she looked like a warrior ready to challenge her lord. The open tunic fell almost to her hips, revealing more skin than she had ever meant to show. And beneath the loose robe, she wore nothing at all. Draven's playful expression faded, his gaze darkened, intense, almost dangerous. Clarity began to abandon him, replaced by a desire as old as night. And now what? Arielleth thought, uneasy. His expression had grown nearly somber. By all the saints, why did he have to be so attractive? "Of course I would not have opened the door," she replied, too quickly. "But you should have knocked anyway." The moment the words left her mouth, she felt ridiculous. If only he would stop looking at her like that. "Have you never lied?" Draven asked, noticing the tremor in her eyes. The question caught her off guard, exactly as he intended. Draven took a few steps closer. "I have always spoken the truth, no matter how painful," she replied firmly. "And you know it." She moved closer so he could hear her, ready to scold him properly. But she forgot the width of the robe, and the bath set along her path. She stumbled, struck her toe, and nearly fell face first into the water if Draven had not caught her. He held her by the hips while she rubbed her aching toe. "Every time I come near you, I end up hurt," she grumbled. He frowned, startled. "I have never harmed you," he replied harshly. "Well, you have threatened me," she murmured. Then she noticed his hand still on her waist. "Let me go. Or shall I carry you like a sack of oats to my chamber, so you may fulfill your duty as my wife?" Gently he turned her to face him. She kept her eyes lowered. Draven lifted her chin with a soft touch. "Why won't you leave me in peace?" she whispered, caught between fear and something deeper. "I have tried, Arielleth." His voice was a warm murmur, like a summer caress. His thumb brushed the skin of her chin, a touch so light, and yet devastating. "Are you trying to enchant me?" she whispered. "You are the one who has enchanted me," he confessed. His voice grew rough, and Arielle's heart began to race. She could barely breathe. She brushed her tongue against the pad of his thumb, just a touch, a fleeting whim that made her knees tremble. Could it be that she was bewitching him? The thought shivered through her like a kiss. And she wanted to kiss him. Just one, she promised herself. Then she would push him away. But Draven did not seem inclined to retreat. Tired of the tension, she pushed his hands aside and rose onto her toes to brush his chin with a timid kiss. When he did not react, she grew bolder, resting her hands on his shoulders. The way he watched her helped, though she felt how tense he had become. "I will only give you a good-night kiss," she explained in a trembling voice. "I like kissing you, Draven, but that is all I can grant you." He did not move. He did not even breathe. She could not tell whether his stillness angered or flattered her, until their lips met and she understood that he too burned for that contact. She sighed. Draven growled, impatient. The kiss deepened when she sought him herself. He took control at once, claiming her with an intensity that made her lose herself. She did not want to stop. When she realized it, she pushed him away abruptly. Draven still held her by the waist. He let her step back, curious to see what she would do next. Arielleth was a mystery, sweet and fierce, fearful and bold. She avoided his gaze. Heat rose to her cheeks. Then he scooped her up in his arms. Startled, she tugged at the hem of her robe to cover her knees. He almost told her that her modesty was unnecessary. He had already tended her body when she was ill. But he felt her go rigid and held his tongue. Halfway up the stairs, she stammered. "I forgot my nightgown. I cannot sleep in this tunic. It is stiff as a helm." "You will not need anything," he replied. "Yes, I do," she insisted weakly. There was no answer. And when the door closed behind them, she understood that she had lost the battle. They were in Draven's bedchamber. He set her gently down on the bed and, unhurried, secured the bolt. Then he turned, arms crossed over his chest, smiling at her with that charming crescent of a grin. Those flared nostrils seemed out of place on a warrior like him, and yet they utterly disarmed her. The silence between them was like a net closing in. She felt like a hare cornered by a wolf. "Are you trying to frighten me?" she asked. Draven shook his head. "I do not want to frighten you." He moved toward the bed. "I understand that the first time can terrify a maiden." She jumped, indignant. "First time? Draven, you will not enter my bed." "Yes, I will." "I can share the same bed, but nothing more will happen tonight. Arielleth, we are husband and wife. It is customary to consummate the marriage." "And is it also customary to force a woman to marry?" Draven shrugged. Seeing her on the verge of tears, he chose to provoke her rather than watch her cry. "It was necessary," he said. "You say necessary, but you mean convenient, don't you? What else will it be necessary to force me to do tonight, Draven? You do not even give me explanations. That is unforgivable. Did you expect me to explain my reasons to you?" He roared. She backed toward the bed, twisting her hands. He regretted raising his voice. He tried to calm himself. He walked to the hearth, and without taking his eyes off her, loosened the laces of his tunic with deliberate slowness. She tried not to look, but it was impossible. His golden skin reflected the firelight, and every movement revealed strength shaped by years of battle. She wanted to touch him. The thought scandalized her completely. "You think I am a harlot," she whispered. "For having lived with a fallen priest, those were your words. And you would not want to lie with a woman like that, would you?" "Pray," she told herself, "that he does not want to." Draven smiled at her clumsy attempt. "Harlots know how to please a man, little one. Maidens, on the other hand." She did not understand, but her feigned confidence crumbled. "They do not," she replied. "I mean, we do not." He arched a brow, triumphant. She lowered her gaze. "I am not a harlot. And you know it." Her innocence fascinated him. Draven finished undressing, and slipped into the bed from the other side. She turned her back on him. When he lifted the covers, he felt her shoulders tense. He pretended to yawn as he extinguished the candle. An obvious lie, his desire was as tangible as the fire in the hearth. It would be a long night. Arielleth. She hated the way he pronounced her name when he was angry, stretching the last syllable like a reproach. My name is not Arielleth, she murmured. Come to bed. I am not sleepy. It was not a clever excuse, but fear made her forget all sense. A knot tightened in her stomach. If she vomited in front of him, she would die of shame. I do not know what I am supposed to do, she admitted in a broken whisper. Chapter 44. The wolf found his home in her. Arielleth's muffled whimper tore at his soul. Do you remember the first night we slept together, in my tent? Draven asked with a softness that was almost velvet. She thought he was trying to soothe her. That night I gave you my word, he went on. I promised I would never hurt you. Have I ever broken that oath? How could I know, she murmured. You never said it again. She turned to look at him, and made a reckless mistake. Draven had not bothered to cover himself. Burning with embarrassment, Arielleth snatched the sheet and flung it over him. Please cover yourself. It isn't proper to show your legs. Her blush betrayed her. Draven held back a smile. He was not sure how much longer that mask of calm would last. I desire you, he confessed, with a frankness that made her shiver. But I want you to desire it too, Arielleth. I'm not going to beg you, she replied, straight-backed in her pride. One day you will, he answered, not as a threat but as a quiet certainty. Arielleth studied him for a long moment, trying to discern whether he was mocking her or speaking with his heart laid bare. She found no answer in his face, only an inscrutable stillness. She bit her lip, uneasy. Promise me something, she said at last, almost in a whisper. Promise me you won't force me. Draven exhaled, weary of her constant doubt, of herself and of him. But he nodded, with the gravity of an ancient vow. I trust you, Arielleth whispered. It's strange. I think I always have. I know. That familiar arrogance made her smile, and with the smile came relief, the sense of being at last safe. Since you don't want me to fetch my nightgown, she said then, I'll have to wear one of your shirts. She didn't wait for an answer. She opened the chest and rummaged through folds of wool. Unsure whether he was watching, she turned her back as she let the robe fall and slipped into a shirt that barely covered her knees. Then she slid under the sheets so quickly that she bumped into him. She spent a long while shifting restlessly, trying to find a way to move close enough to feel his warmth without seeming to do it on purpose. At last she found a space by his side. She drew a deep breath. She wanted Draven to notice her presence. Deep down, she wished he would slip an arm around her and draw her close. She had grown used to that solid strength of his, and though she would never admit it, she liked it. It made her feel protected, as if the world grew quiet when she curled up beside him. It was a fantasy, so she justified it, but fantasies harmed no one. Draven, oblivious to the tangle of thoughts within her, only knew that getting her into bed had taken an eternity. Her nightly ritual was a mystery that seemed designed to test the patience of any mortal. Still, it was worth it. With that thought, he turned toward her. Propped on one elbow, he looked at her in surprise. She was not hiding beneath the covers but gazing straight at him. Good night, Draven, she whispered, with a smile that set his chest ablaze. He wanted far more than a smile. I want a good-night kiss, my wife, he asked, with that calm arrogance that so unsettled her. I already gave you one, she replied. Was it so light that you forgot it? Was she provoking him? It had to be so. Confidence had returned to her eyes. And something else as well, a glimmer that mingled nerves, curiosity, and a yearning she herself did not yet understand. She could not stop looking at his mouth. And when Draven wrapped an arm around her, cutting off any distance between them, Arielleth did not resist. She simply let her own breath guide her toward him. Chapter 45. She spoke to the heart that no one had dared to touch. Perhaps she wanted to provoke him. Draven reached that conclusion when he saw the certainty settle in her eyes, and a spark of triumph. She trusted him. And that simple, devastating gesture sent shivers through his soul. Something warm and urgent began to grow inside him, disorienting him. He couldn't look away from her lips. He leaned toward her slowly, like someone approaching the edge of an abyss he knew was inevitable. He wrapped an arm around her, not to hold her back but to keep her close, to speak with skin when words no longer sufficed. The kiss he gave her sought nothing but to ease her fear. It was a gentle brush at first, soft as an ancient vow. But as soon as Arielleth responded, barely a breath, a trembling caress against his cheek, Draven felt something deep and wild unleash within him. She sighed against his mouth, a sound as light as a wing's brush, and it set him ablaze. When he lifted his head, he saw a light in her eyes that left him defenseless. Arielleth smiled against his lips, shy and brave all at once. That trust tore him apart and filled him in equal measure. Her fingers traced up Draven's neck, hesitant at first, then surer. He could not resist. He kissed her again, this time with a need he could not hide. She laughed softly when he nibbled her lip, and Draven let out a moan that was more like a plea. The kiss deepened, burning hotter. His hands traced the curves of her back, exploring with desperate tenderness. Arielleth shivered from head to toe, unable to contain the surge of sensations coursing through her. Every thought dissolved. Only he remained. Only that heat, enveloping her completely. Draven felt her trembling, and forced himself to restrain his desire. She was so close that every breath challenged his reason. He had to go slowly. He had to give her space to breathe, to choose. But Arielleth did not pull away. She drew him closer, arms wrapped around his neck, seeking the strength of his body as if she had waited her whole life for it. He buried his face in her neck, leaving fiery kisses that made her gasp. Every word he whispered seeped directly into her skin, igniting her. "You drive me crazy," he murmured against her throat, voice raw. She closed her eyes, absorbing every note of his voice, every tremor in his hands, every restraint surrendered. She knew that a single word could stop him. She knew it with the quiet certainty that comes from true trust. But she said nothing. Instead she sought his chest, clinging to him, trying to think clearly, without success. Draven followed her when she pulled back just for a moment, adjusting the sheets to cover her with a care that left her defenseless. Their bodies remained close, intertwined beneath the dim light filtering through the window crack. The shirt she wore slipped slightly, revealing the curve of her neck and the gentle slope of her shoulders. Draven held his breath at the sight, as if before something sacred. His fingers trembled slightly, as they traced an invisible line over her skin. Arielleth felt the world pause. He lifted his gaze. His eyes were dark, alight with a desire that fought to be patient. "Do you like kissing me, Draven?" she asked at last. Her voice was a whisper, and a challenge. One he had no intention of losing. Chapter 46. A storm. Draven hadn't expected that question. For a moment he lost his voice, until he managed to catch his breath. "Yes, Arielleth," he murmured. "I like kissing you. Perhaps as much as you like kissing me." A trembling smile softened her face. The shiver that ran through her he felt as well, as if their skin responded to each other. When Draven leaned in and brushed her lower lip with a gentle, almost reverent touch, Arielleth let out a sigh that set him ablaze inside. She was driving him mad. Resisting her was a storm. Desiring her was an unanswered prayer, yet still he would never step back. He kissed her arched brows, then the freckles that dotted her nose, as if tracing a secret map with his lips. Arielleth waited, motionless, increasingly trembling as he traveled across her skin, until his mouth reached her neck. "I want to kiss you again, Draven," she whispered, a perfect blend of innocence and daring. Her frankness pierced him. It was newly discovered fire, unnamed. No one had explained, no one had shown him what could awaken from the touch of a loved one. And yet there she was, surrendering to the mystery, unable and unwilling to stop. "Do not be afraid," he said, his voice almost a vow. "Not with me." Arielleth wanted to tell him everything, how she longed for him, how she had silently chosen him for so long, how one single night would be enough to believe in his promises. But the words broke in her throat. He ran his fingers over her body with infinite tenderness, as one would caress something precious. When he cupped her breasts, Arielleth arched toward him, surprised by the poignant sweetness of the pleasure he stirred. His lips sought hers, and he kissed her with a growing fervor, as if the world had shrunk to that suspended moment. She wrapped her arms around his shoulders, clinging, letting herself be guided by the intensity of his touch. Her body shivered beneath his, warm, pulsing, alive. Draven looked at her then, and saw tears glistening in her eyes. "Tell me what you feel, my love," he whispered, catching a tear with his thumb. Arielleth drew in a trembling breath. "It's not right to desire you like this, but I do. It hurts to want you so much." Draven's expression softened, as if her words had completely disarmed him. "Now you're my wife. Nothing is forbidden between us." He kissed her again, with a passion so intense that she felt the world tilt beneath their bodies. Arielleth responded in kind, leaving marks of her nails on his back, clinging to him with absolute surrender. Then Draven held her gently, settling her beneath him, drawing them closer. She felt his strength, his tremor, his reverence. He was a man trying to contain a sea. "Tell me you love me," Draven whispered, forehead resting against hers. "Tell me so I won't forget that it's your desire, not just mine." Arielleth cupped his face in her hands, and her voice came out as a sigh. "I love you, and I love you." That was enough. Their bodies sought each other at the same time. They met like two converging currents, as if destiny had woven them for that instant. They joined in a deep dance, slow at first, full of wonder, like waves learning each other's rhythm. The world became light and shadow, breath and shiver. Moving together, they followed the ancient pulse of something greater than themselves, a silent music that wrapped them and lifted them. Every doubt dissolved in whispers, kisses and touches that were more than desire, they were belonging. And when the night finally carried them to their peak, it did so like a wave breaking on the shore, vast, inevitable, absolute. Chapter 47. A whisper. He whispered her name in a hoarse murmur, holding her with an intensity that seemed to want to melt her against him. Then he collapsed beside her, still murmuring Arielleth as if it were a satisfied prayer. They were both slick with the warm sweat of shared effort. The air around them carried the sweet, wild scent of their surrender. Arielleth pressed her tongue to his shoulder, tasting the salt of his skin as one might sample a secret. Draven remained still, determined not to move a finger away from her. He had never known such completeness. When he finally caught his breath, he lifted himself slightly to look at her. Eyes closed, cheeks flushed, she seemed to have returned to her shy nature, and he smiled, imagining how much her own reactions would embarrass her in full lucidity. "Did I hurt you?" he asked. "A little," she admitted, her voice low. "And did I please you?" Arielleth looked at him with a mix of modesty and fascination. His arrogant smile disarmed her. "Very much, Draven." Her answer filled him with quiet pride. He already knew, but hearing it from her lips was another caress. He leaned in to kiss her, and in her eyes that deep blue glimmer shone again, leaving him defenseless. He felt she could absorb all his strength if he let her. She was more dangerous than any enemy, more fascinating than any battle. He lay back, hands clasped behind his head, lost in thought. At first he didn't notice how Arielleth was reaching for the blanket to cover herself, uneasy at his silence. "Do you regret anything, Draven?" she asked, trembling. He exhaled a short, almost impatient grunt, but not toward her. It was aimed at himself, at the truths he had just discovered. This unpredictable woman, capable of crying with a heart so overflowing, had found a crack in his armor. Arielleth felt the shift like a lash. The heat that had wrapped around them dissipated, replaced by humiliation and fear. She covered her eyes, and the tears came without mercy. Draven sighed. He knew exactly what she needed. He drew her against his chest beneath the sheets and let her cry until she soaked him. When her sobs finally subsided, he spoke. "Arielleth, Tell me why you are crying." She pulled back just slightly. "Because I see you didn't like it. I know I was clumsy." He looked at her with a mixture of disbelief and tenderness. "You weren't clumsy. You were innocent. And you pleased me more than I ever imagined." Her eyes filled with tears again, but this time not of fear. When she, unaware, revealed her body as she sat up, desire flared between them again like rekindled embers. Draven took her by the waist and brought her back to his chest, halting her attempt to flee. She struggled, even managing to jab him with her knee, but he held her gently, firmly, without aggression, understanding her confusion, her shame, her wounded pride. "Look at me properly, wife," he said with soft gravity. "I liked it. All of it. Do not doubt that." Arielleth met his gaze for a long moment. "Really? Really?" She sighed, letting her forehead drop against his chin. "I liked you too," she admitted. He smiled, brushing her cheek with his thumb, erasing her pout. "I know." Then he kissed her, a slow burning kiss that rekindled that sway of desire between them, like an inevitable tide. Arielleth moved over him with a timidity that was also boldness, and he held her by the waist. "Sleep," he murmured against her lips, still panting. "If we continue, it will hurt tomorrow." She, determined and radiant, brushed her lips along the base of his neck. "Are you going to make me beg, Draven?" He smiled against her skin and leaned over her again, beginning once more a slow, enveloping courtship, like two dancers seeking each other unhurriedly, guided only by the tide of their own desire. Chapter 48. Confusion. Draven had always been considered a practical man. He knew his own virtues: iron discipline, stubbornness, a will that bent for no one, and never judged them as flaws. His life rested on routine, days structured with the precision of a military camp. In that predictability he found stability, and as the lord of a vast army, he believed that without order, only one fearsome creature could emerge: chaos. Chaos. The word alone summoned the image of his wife, delicate in appearance and overflowing in essence. Never admitting it aloud, Draven recognized that Arielleth had elevated the concept of disorder to near mythical levels. From the day he took her as his wife, his life had never regained calm. Perhaps, and this he thought only in secret, marrying her had been the first truly reckless decision of his life. He had naively believed he could maintain his old routine, just as he had believed he could ignore her, as he had before exchanging vows. He had been wrong on both counts. Arielleth was more obstinate than a rock against the waves. That stubbornness, he believed, was the only possible explanation for the brazen ease with which she defied his opinions. Draven did not like change. Deep down, he was certain Arielleth knew it. When he ordered her to stop moving furniture and objects, she looked at him with an innocence as calculated as it was false, then immediately continued her task in silence, as if the lord of the castle's commands were nothing more than a suggestion. And yet, she remained shy with him. A single intense look from Draven was enough to make her blush like a maiden seeing a man for the first time. He found the contrast disconcerting. This woman, capable of reshaping his castle from the foundations, would flush simply at his presence. But if he was distracted for even a moment, Arielleth seized the opportunity to act at her whim. The changes she introduced were far from subtle. The most obvious and least forgivable in Draven's eyes had occurred in the Great Hall. She had ordered the removal of the rickety platform that held the old, noble, though decrepit plank where the warriors dined. She had sent it to the garrison to be replaced with a new table, smaller, flawless, and crafted by a carpenter she herself had hired without asking permission. The servants, meanwhile, were on the edge of exhaustion, caught up in what they called Lady Arielleth's obsession with cleanliness. They thought she was a little mad, but none dared admit it to the lord. Draven, silent and observant, noticed how everyone hurried to please her. It seemed that serving her had become their sole mission. The castle, however, had never looked so transformed. The floors gleamed, the walls had been refreshed and adorned, new braided mats scented the air with wild rose. And above the hearth, dominating everything, hung a deep blue banner embroidered with Draven's emblem, white as foam on a stormy night. Arielleth had even managed to make the great hall, cold, solemn, designed only for sustenance and little else, welcoming. She had created intimate corners, spaces to sit, talk, or simply exist. Draven could not understand the point of such a thing. To him, halls were for eating or briefly warming oneself by the fire, not for lounging. But his wife ignored that simple truth, and had built a space that invited rest, conversation, life. To Draven's astonishment, even his soldiers had begun wiping their feet before entering the hall. He did not know whether to feel pride or concern. Had they too succumbed to his wife's influence? The greatest challenge for Arielleth, however, had been the dogs. She brought them downstairs, they climbed back up, until she discovered the alpha male, and seduced him with a piece of meat down the stairs. That was enough for the entire pack to understand that the kingdom of food lay at the foot of the steps. Arielleth's victory was absolute. The old habits of tossing bones over one's shoulder during feasts disappeared in a single afternoon. According to Garin, she had seated herself at the head of the hall, looked at the warriors with regal severity, and announced that anyone who wished to eat would have to behave like a civilized being. No one protested. All obeyed. In truth, Arielleth was more tiger than kitten. If a servant disrespected a Wulfsen, she scolded them mercilessly. And in fact, Draven himself had received more than one of these lessons. She was gentler with him, yes, but never silent when something needed to be said. The truth was that all the soldiers felt a duty to protect her. She never thanked anyone, not out of rudeness but because she did not understand the danger. Her innocence made her reckless. Once, in her rush to reach the stables, she had run in front of a line of training archers. An arrow grazed her head like a sharp sigh. The archer dropped to his knees, horrified. He did not hit another target for the rest of the day. Arielleth, oblivious to the disaster she had caused, continued running as if the gods were protecting her. There were so many accidents that Draven stopped counting them. By dusk he dreaded the moment when Faramond, faithful as a shadow at his back, would give him the day's report. The poor man seemed exhausted. Draven was certain he would have preferred facing a Norman invasion 1,000 times over, than continuing to follow Lady Arielleth's footsteps. Chapter 49. A fierce clarity. It took Draven some time to understand, but at last he realized, Arielleth had grown careless, almost reckless, and the reason, so simple and radiant, filled him with a strange, profound satisfaction. She felt safe. During the days when fever had trapped her in delirium, Draven had heard fragments of a childhood that had chilled him to the bone. Arielleth had been a quiet child, taught to make herself small so as not to be seen. Her mother had tried to protect her from her father, and from Morhollow, but the 2 years the girl spent alone with her brother after her mother's death had been a reign of fear and cruelty. She had learned far too early not to laugh or cry, not to show joy or anger, because any emotion could be turned against her. Her uncle, the priest, had taught her the rudiments of self-control, not to shape her but to help her survive. No one had imagined that her stay at the priest's house would last for years, so Arielleth always lived with the fear that Morhollow might claim her at any moment. Caution had followed fear. But now, wrapped in the safety of Wulfsen Castle, her prudence had vanished like mist under the sun. Draven knew it was better to let her discover this herself. Sometimes she seemed clumsy or scatterbrained, but in reality she was just awakening, testing life like a filly newly released into the meadow, eager to run without chains. It was a delight to watch her, and a nightmare to try to protect her. What Draven could not decipher were his own feelings toward her. He had ridden to Morhollow's fortress to abduct her. Vengeance had been a clear, almost rational plan, an eye for an eye, a tooth for a tooth. Everything made sense. Until she had warmed his feet. From that moment something had broken, or perhaps been born inside him. He understood with a fierce clarity that they were bound, that he could never let her go. And so he had made her his wife. The next day, Morhollow's army had abandoned Wulfsen lands. Each day, Draven found a new reason to justify that reckless, irreversible act. He tried to rein in his heart with the reins of logic, clinging to explanations that could not hold. On Monday, he told himself he had married her to give her a refuge, a place to live without fear. After all, she had risked her life to save his. It was fair. Honor for honor. On Tuesday, he admitted that he desired her. That lust alone was reason enough. What was wrong with acknowledging it? On Wednesday, he reconsidered the matter, his strength, her fragility. It was only natural to assume the role of protector. Arielleth, without swearing him loyalty, had somehow become his responsibility. Compassion, he told himself. Nothing more. On Thursday, another truth surfaced, deeper and harder to deny. He didn't just want to protect her, he wanted to show her her worth. To prove she was not the invisible wreck Morhollow had forged through blows. She had been forgotten for years, left at the mercy of a priest's charity. Draven had given her a name, a home, a title. A place in the world. That had to mean something. But even that explanation crumbled. Draven stubbornly clung to the notion that he could ignore her during the day, and love her with brutal intensity each night. It seemed reasonable, he had distanced himself from his own family, so why not achieve the same with her? Arielleth had learned the path to his heart, but that did not mean she could change the way he lived. The truth haunted him all week, like the first thunderclap announcing an imminent storm. And on Friday afternoon, barely 2 weeks after their wedding, the storm broke. With the violence of the sky tearing itself apart. Chapter 50. The Colossal Stallion. Draven had just reached the upper courtyard when Emric's shout tore through the air. He turned just in time to see Arielleth running toward the stables. The farm gate stood wide open. Silas had escaped. The gigantic stallion charged forward head low, hooves throwing up sparks of earth. He was barreling straight at her, ready to mow her down like a dry branch. The stable boy ran after the animal, reins in hand, with Faramond keeping pace beside him. Both shouted warnings, but the thunder of hooves swallowed their voices. Arielleth did not turn around even once. For a heartbeat, Draven knew he was going to lose her. No. The roar rose from so deep within him that it made him shudder. His heart slammed against his chest as if trying to break free. Every thought narrowed to a single command: protect her. The 3 men sprinted toward her, desperate to reach her, but it was not necessary. Silas stopped a breath away from knocking her down. A cloud of dust enveloped Arielleth, forcing her to raise an arm to shield herself. The enormous animal stretched out his neck and gently touched her hand, as if claiming a tribute. She understood. Everyone stood frozen, struck dumb with astonishment, as the stallion pawed the ground and kept nudging her, impatient for his sweet reward. Arielleth smiled, radiant, and offered her palm. Silas licked the prize with satisfaction. Only when he finished did she pat his neck. That was when she noticed Torvin and Faramond panting, a short distance away. Faramond leaned on his companion, as if he had just survived a battle. "Is your wound troubling you, Faramond?" she asked kindly. "You've gone pale." Faramond shook his head far too vigorously. Arielleth looked at Torvin, who stared at her with bulging eyes. "So my little lamb finally broke the fence? He's been trying for weeks." Torvin did not answer, petrified. "Come on, Silas. I think you frightened Torvin," she murmured. She walked calmly around the horse and headed back toward the stables. Silas followed docilely, trotting behind her like a faithful dog, guided by the soft melody she hummed. Draven would have liked to chase after her and scold her like a king, or strangle her for making him feel that way. But he had to wait for his legs to obey him again. He leaned against the wall. Suddenly he felt old, exhausted, as if his soul had been drained all at once. Emric was no better. He had dropped to his knees without realizing it. Faramond, on the other hand, seemed to be the only one who had recovered his composure. He approached Draven whistling, insolence incarnate. Draven wanted to kill him for it. The vassal placed a hand on his shoulder, a gesture meant to be sympathetic. Draven did not know whether that comfort was for having taken Arielleth as his wife, or for the spectacle they had just witnessed. Either way, it irritated him even more.
"There's something I wanted to speak to you about, Draven."
Faramund's voice was calm, but it caught the Baron's attention at once.
"What is it?"
"Your wife is determined to ride Silas. When I'm dead and can no longer stop her," Draven roared. Faramund dared to smile. He turned away to hide it. "Protecting your wife is a demanding task. Once she gets something into her head, there's no human force that can make her give it up." "She's ruined my best horse," Draven thundered.
"Yes," Faramund admitted with a trace of laughter. "That's true."
Draven shook his head, seized by a furious tremor. "By the heavens! I thought I'd lost her." He looked at his shaking hands, and his anger flared anew. "I'll kill her. You may attend the execution, if it pleases you." Faramund did not flinch.
"And why would you want to kill her?" "You'd have a fine day," Draven snapped.
The vassal laughed out loud. "I didn't ask why I'd like to see the lady die, Baron. I asked why you want to kill her." Faramund's cheer earned him nothing but a dark look from his lord. "Would you like to carry water from the river to the kitchen all day, bucket after bucket? Does that strike you as a worthy occupation, Faramund?" Anyone else would have gone pale at such a threat. Faramund did not. "The mission you've already assigned me is dangerous enough, Baron. Ask Tomrich."
"What does Tomrich have to do with this?"
"He nearly drowned yesterday. He was standing on the cistern when a ball struck him in the back. He fell headfirst." Draven raised a hand, demanding silence. He did not need to hear more. A bitter certainty forced its way in. His sweet wife had something to do with it. The previous afternoon, he had seen her teaching the castle children a new game. Emric arrived then, still ashen.
"What's so amusing?"
"Our lord is going to kill his wife," Faramund announced. Emric snorted. "For God's sake. Our lord couldn't kill a little lamb right now." Humiliation burned through Draven. And to make matters worse, Emric had heard, like everyone, Arielleth call her fierce stallion, Little Lamb. "It seems our abductor has become a prisoner himself," Emric added, walking away with a smirk. Faramund watched him go, and murmured, "Arielleth is a woman one could fall in love with easily, Baron." "Easily?" "Yes, of course, as easy as swallowing a sword." They were opposites in everything, he rigid as an oak trunk, she light and changeable as the wind. But deep down Draven knew the truth, there was no escape.
Not since she had touched his feet.
He was in love. "I will not let her unravel my life," he declared, as if swearing a vow to the gods.
"Perhaps with time,"
Faramund ventured.
"When I'm so old I can't get out of bed," Draven cut her off, "maybe that day I'll find a little peace."
"Peace can be boring," Faramund smiled. "Your wife has brought life back to the entire castle." Draven frowned. Faramund understood the cue, and stepped back. The Baron was grateful for the solitude, accompanied only by the roar of his own heart. The image of Silas charging at Arielleth lingered before his eyes, indelible. She had tamed her horse, just as she had tamed me. Draven smiled for the first time, accepting that truth. Emric had been right, he was the prisoner. Arielleth had captured his heart. And that realization shone like a revelation. Draven felt as if his soul had returned to his body after a long fast. "I won't avoid her anymore, not ever. It's time to act." He strode toward her, determined to scold her first, and then kiss her. Yes, he was still furious. She had upended his heart, made him feel an unbearable fear. He was not used to loving, nor to fearing. One will take time, the other too. But both paths he realized led to her. Chapter 51. Sweet Enchantress. Another shout cut through the air. Cadman, the sentinel on the south wall, announced that a banner was approaching the fortress. The wind unfurled its colors. It was Baron Ardgar and his men demanding entry. Just what I needed to cap a day full of surprises. Draven had himself sent a messenger to Overgaard to explain the matter of a scyther, convinced that would be enough to break the engagement. But if the Baron had undertaken such a long journey, something remained unresolved. He would have to be diplomatic, even if it meant plunging a scyther back into torment. Perhaps I'm overthinking it. Overgaard's an old friend. He could come for 1,000 reasons. But lately Arielleth, sweet enchantress, had even infected him with a tendency to imagine the worst. She also stole his focus. He remembered the day she appeared in the courtyard while he was rallying his troops. Just seeing her move, light as a Celtic verse, made Draven forget his own orders. The soldiers watched in silence, as he struggled to remember what on earth he was saying. Garin, compassionate, had to step in to help. Cadman's shout snapped him back again. Draven turned to Arielleth without even greeting her, and issued orders in a tense voice. A scyther is inside. Go tell her Baron Overgaard has arrived. He will dine with us. Arielleth widened her eyes, surprised. Overgaard? Why is he here? Did you invite him? No, Draven replied, impatient that she hadn't already dashed off to carry out the task. He had her so close he wanted to kiss her, and that single thought disarmed him. Do as I say, wife. I always do what you say, she replied with a mischievous smile. She turned halfway toward the castle. And good afternoon to you too, Draven, she added over her shoulder. He muttered a curse. He didn't even have time to strangle her calmly. Arielleth. She stopped, rigid, not looking at him until he commanded. Come here. Arielleth approached cautiously. The sudden sweetness in his voice made her uneasy. Yes, Draven. He cleared his throat, straightened as if going to war, and murmured. Good afternoon. He hadn't even wanted to say it, but he had. And Arielleth smiled. He grabbed her suddenly against his chest and kissed her. She froze in surprise. Draven never touched her in broad daylight, and much less under so many eyes. And this was no timid kiss, it was fiery, confident, claiming her. Just as Arielleth began to surrender, he released her. Do not call my horse my little lamb again, he said with a half-smile. She barely breathed. He was already walking away when Arielleth lifted her skirt and ran after him, taking his hand. He stopped the moment he felt her touch. Are you ill, Draven? She asked, trembling. You're smiling too much. No, he replied. Then why are you smiling like that? Draven shook his head, patient for once. Arielleth, tell a scyther that Overgaard has arrived. Did you just say please? He whispered, wide-eyed. Obey, he growled, though he did not lose the smile. She nodded, but continued to look at him, so flustered she could not move until he had gone completely. What is happening to me? Draven has always been as predictable as iron, and now he's unrecognizable. If it was summer she might think it heat stroke, but in mid-January only mysteries remained. She sighed and tried to clear her mind. But pushing Draven aside was like trying to cross a thorny field barefoot. Duty distracted her. A scyther was in her chamber brushing her hair. We have visitors, a scyther, Arielleth announced with studied cheerfulness. The young girl smiled until she saw who it was. She slumped in the chair. I won't go down. Draven gave me his word. How could he invite him? He didn't invite him, Arielleth reassured her. And your brother would never break his word. You know that in your heart. A scyther nodded, broken. Maybe if I behave as I did when you arrived, Overgaard will leave horrified. You speak without thinking, Arielleth interrupted. You'll only make him feel pity. He might think you're not fully recovered. If you go down with dignity and greet him with respect, he will understand that your decision is firm. And it will be Draven who answers, not you. I can't see him. I'll die of embarrassment. Scyther, what happened was not your fault. And he knows that, Arielleth said, even with her heart clenched. A scyther didn't seem convinced, so Arielleth changed tactics. Tell me, how do you remember Overgaard? Is he handsome?
He has dark hair.
I think, Isaitha murmured, uncertain. And is he kind? Barons don't need to be kind, she replied, trying to turn away. Stay still or your braid will be crooked, Arielleth chided, laughing softly. I just wanted to know. I won't go down, Isaitha repeated, tears silently falling. Arielleth knelt beside her. You won't do anything you don't want, but the least you can do is remain with your brother. Treat Ardgar as an honored guest. I'll be with you. Will you go down with me? Will you stay by my side? Of course, Arielleth promised. Together, we can face any shadow. Isaitha nodded. Arielleth examined her braids. I'm afraid they hang from your ears. We need to redo them, and you need another tunic. I must prepare dinner and change as well. She encouraged her with an affectionate pat before leaving. She kept her smile until the door closed, and only then let her own mood darken. As she walked down the corridor, she began to pray for the one thing she believed she needed: courage. Chapter 52. The love that tamed the man behind the wolf. After giving Wenleth instructions for dinner, Arielleth went up to her chamber in the tower. 2 weeks had passed since Draven had torn down the door, and only one since it was rebuilt. The bolt, however, had yet to be replaced, and every time she noticed it, Arielleth couldn't help but smile. That has to be Draven. He's afraid I'll barricade myself inside again. She rummaged through her dresses until she chose a night blue tunic that reached her ankles, which, paired with the white over-tunic falling to her knees, enhanced her figure with simple elegance. They were Wulfsen colors, and the gesture was deliberate. After all, she was Draven's wife, and tonight she would be the one to welcome Baron Ardgar. I want him to be proud of me, more than I'll admit. She combed her hair calmly, letting the curls settle over her chest. She still had time, so she sat on the bed and braided 3 long strips of blue fabric into a playful, flexible sash. She tied it around her waist, letting it fall with that soft, modern air Isaitha so admired. She finished the ensemble with the small dagger she used at the table, slipping it into a makeshift loop on the new sash. She wished for a mirror. Just for a moment. Then dismissed the thought, too much vanity for a mere whim. She was halfway to Ositha's room when a thought stopped her cold. Would Baron Ardgar call her Draven's wife or Morhollow's sister? Heaven knew he had reasons to hate her brother. Morhollow had ruined Ardgar's future by destroying Isaitha. Is the Baron going to take out his anger on me? Her mind filled with shadows and dreadful scenes. When she imagined Ardgar's hand rising toward her throat, she forced herself to stop. Yes, she was afraid, but that same fear restored her composure. She lifted her chin and assumed a serene expression. She had survived worse trials, and that memory gave her strength. Besides, even if Ardgar threatened her, Draven would never let anyone harm her. Isaitha was ready when Arielleth knocked on her door. She wore a pale pink over-tunic atop an even lighter tunic, her hair gathered in a soft crown that made her look like a lady from an old ballad. Isaitha, my little dove, you look radiant, Arielleth murmured. Isaitha smiled. You call me so many funny things, as if you were older than me, when you know very well I'm 2 years older than you.
That's no way to receive a compliment, Arielleth replied, elegantly dismissing the age difference.
After all, perhaps Isaitha had been born first, but Arielleth felt more seasoned by life. She was not fragile, and besides, she was a married woman. Thank you for saying I look radiant, Isaitha corrected herself. And you are always beautiful. Tonight you wear Draven's colors. He won't be able to take his eyes off you.
He probably won't even notice, Arielleth tried to joke.
Oh, he will. I predict it without a doubt, Isaitha replied mischievously. Have you softened your attitude toward my brother yet? Isaitha was about to sink into the chair, as if they had all afternoon, but Arielleth took her hand and guided her toward the door. I don't know what to think of your brother, she confessed as they walked side by side. One moment I think this marriage suits both of us, and the next I'm sure he wants to get rid of me. I'm not stupid, Isaitha. I know why he took me as his wife. To settle scores with your brother? A Scyther asked, tilting her head. See? You say it yourself, Arielleth exclaimed. A Scyther opened her mouth to qualify her words, not believing Draven had gone that far for revenge alone, but Arielleth continued, lost in her own conjectures. It would be an illusion to think he could get used to me. And even if he did, it wouldn't last. The king will demand annulment. We both know that. A Scyther nodded gravely. Garin says the king is in Normandy again, quelling another rebellion. I've heard that too. Arielleth, what did you mean when you said you hoped Draven would get used to having you as his wife? He made a sacrifice by marrying me. He gave up Lady Morena. I just hope he isn't unhappy. How can you see yourself as a sacrifice? A Scyther protested. Don't you understand how important you've become to all of us? Seeing Arielleth remain silent, she added softly. Do you love my brother? I'm not that foolish, she denied immediately. Everyone I've loved has been taken from me. I won't give my heart to a wolf. I just want peace, for as long as we're together. A Scyther smiled tenderly. Draven isn't a wolf, Arielleth. He's a man. And I think you're not telling the truth. I always tell the truth, Arielleth replied, distressed. Then you're lying to yourself. Maybe you're trying to protect your heart, but even so you're starting to love him. Otherwise, you wouldn't react this way to my question. I'm not nervous, Arielleth snapped, immediately regretting her outburst. A Scyther, life isn't that simple. I almost pity him. He changed his destiny just to get revenge on Morhollow, and now he's trapped with me. He must regret that impulse. He won't admit it because he's stubborn. Draven has never acted on impulse, a Scyther objected. There's always a first time. A Scyther sighed. Morwenna saw him kissing you in the courtyard, she whispered. And ran to tell you, of course. Naturally. A Scyther laughed. Morwenna and Wenleth compete to see who brings the latest gossip. It was all so strange, Arielleth admitted. Draven kissed me in front of everyone. I'm starting to think he's running a fever. They reached the last step before the entrance, and a Scyther stopped abruptly. My God. I'm terrified. So am I, Arielleth admitted. You? But you seem calm. Why are you afraid? Because Baron Ardgar surely hates me. I'm Morhollow's sister. And this dinner could be torment for me too. Draven won't let anyone insult you. You are his wife. Arielleth nodded, though her expression showed no conviction. A Scyther squeezed her hand, and Arielleth responded with a grateful smile. They stopped again at the entrance to the great hall. Ositha's grip hurt from how tightly she held her hand. The reason was obvious. Draven and Ardgar were standing by the fire, watching them approach. Both looked surprised, neither showed anger. Arielleth smiled at Baron Ardgar before looking at her husband. Draven gazed at her with an intensity that made her cheeks burn. She recognized that look, he always had it after kissing her. The silence among the four of them grew as thick as the smoke from the hearth. Arielleth was the first to remember the protocol. She bowed her head gracefully, and guided a Scyther to do the same. Then she stepped forward with such serene and dignified bearing, that Draven immediately sensed something was troubling her. He went to meet her, and caught up with her halfway across the hall. He leaned toward her, until his arm brushed against her tunic. What frightens you? He murmured, so low that she had to rise on tiptoe to hear him. She was surprised he had noticed her fear. Does Baron Ardgar know I am Morhollow's sister? She asked in a thin, wavering voice. Draven nodded. He encased her shoulders under his protective arm, and led her to his side before formally presenting her to the Baron. Ardgar smiled warmly with sincere kindness. There was no trace of hatred in his expression. He was a man of pleasing appearance, but Arielleth would not have called him handsome. Not while so close to Draven. Her husband was more. more than any word could encompass. She lifted her gaze to him, intending to whisper that he help a scyther, but his proximity left her breathless. Draven's eyes, grey as polished steel with silver flecks, captured her entirely. "Why are you looking at me like that?" he asked, leaning in. Their noses nearly touched, and a fierce impulse ran through him, to take her to the tower, shut the world out, and make love to her until dawn. Arielleth's composure melted instantly. Draven, on the other hand, let a victorious smile spread across his face. Emric entered just as Draven was about to kiss her. A scyther stared at the floor. Ardgar could not take his eyes off her, and Arielleth remained trapped under Draven's gaze. "Good evening," Emric thundered, shaking them all out of their trance. Arielleth jumped and collided squarely with Draven's nose. He stepped back and caught her before she lost her balance. A scyther smiled at Emric with all the shyness in the world. Ardgar responded with a faint gesture. "Lovely evening, don't you think, Draven?" "Ardgar, you've aged frightfully since I last saw you," Emric joked. Draven no longer heard anything. He only wanted to whisk his wife away from prying eyes and interruptions. Still, he mustered the discipline to remember that they had to dine. "It is time," he announced, taking Arielleth by the arm and guiding her toward the table. She didn't understand his urgency, but the intensity in Draven's eyes was enough for her to comply without question. Draven took the head of the table, with Arielleth to his left. He was surprised to see Tomrich enter to serve them. Although a squire was supposed to learn how to attend to his lord, Draven had only instructed him in the art of war. Chapter 53. Too easy. Arielleth immediately recognized another of those changes she had made without asking anyone's permission. She shook her head at her own audacity, greeted Tomrich, and shot Draven a scathing look, while giving him a daring smile. "Draven," she murmured, trying to divert his attention from the squire. "Do you realize this is the first time we've shared a table?" He didn't seem inclined to answer. He rarely spoke during meals. And Garen's delay didn't help. Arielleth noticed the slight stiffening of his posture. Though she was grateful he restrained himself in front of the guest. Father Brandulf didn't appear either. Arielleth was the only one not surprised. She didn't believe Emric's excuse about illness, knowing the young priest was simply afraid of Draven. During dinner, Emric and Garen led the conversation, taking turns asking Baron Ardgar about the years since his last visit. Arielleth listened amusedly as the three teased each other relentlessly, about appearances, feats, or old battles, until she realized it was all affection disguised as mockery. Ardgar laughed easily. When Emric called him weak, and reminded him of how he lost his sword in combat, the Baron answered with another story just as embarrassing for Emric. A scyther seated across from Arielleth barely looked up, but Arielleth saw small smiles escape her at each absurd joke. Ardgar didn't speak directly to her until the end. Emric was between them, and Arielleth thought that from leaning so far to see her, the Baron would end up with a twisted neck. Finally, Emric, taking pity, rose claiming he would fetch more beer, though he had a full mug in front of him. No one believed the pretense. A scyther least of all. "How are you, a scyther?" Ardgar asked politely. "I regret not seeing you that time." Ardgar blushed, and a scyther mirrored him. The Baron had stumbled awkwardly through the incident. The silence fell like an uncomfortable blanket. Draven sighed before speaking. "A scyther was also sorry not to see you in London," he said, looking at his sister. "Scyther, the Baron has asked how you are." Draven's voice was soft, filled with unexpected tenderness. Good heavens, Arielleth thought, this man is becoming far too easy to love. And she wondered, uneasily, if she wasn't already in love with him. Too stubborn to admit it. She let out a sigh deeper than necessary, and immediately regretted such a lapse in composure. Draven turned to her, and with a simple and brazen wink made her heart leap. "I'm well," Scyther finally replied. "And you look well." Ardgar murmured a thanks while Arielleth watched Draven roll his eyes, exasperated by so much pointless courtesy. "Arielleth, I haven't eaten this well in years," Ardgar said, diverting attention from her. I'm glad you enjoyed it, Ardgar. I've eaten too much of everything, the Baron laughed. Then he looked at a scyther. Would you like to take a short walk outside? It helps digestion. He glanced at Draven with urgency. With your permission, of course. Draven granted it before his sister could refuse. A scyther searched desperately for Arielleth, pleading silently with her eyes. Arielleth didn't quite know what to do, but she was determined to make her husband see reason. She gave him a slight kick under the table. Draven didn't react. She struck again, harder. Nothing. Arielleth's patience broke. She delivered a true kick, and lost her slipper in the process. Draven, feigning absolute indifference, slid a hand beneath the table. He found her bare foot and placed it with brazen calm on his lap. Arielleth stifled a gasp, clutching the edge of the table, as he began to stroke the sole of her foot with deliberate gentleness. She tried to pull away but lost her balance, and nearly tumbled off the bench. He's impossible. Completely, utterly impossible, and yet I can't stop feeling this. Garin was seated beside her. When Arielleth stumbled slightly against him, he caught her by the arm to prevent her from falling. Only then did she notice that she had blushed like a maiden. A scyther watched silently, reminding her of the dreaded walk that awaited. Arielleth decided it was time to take the reins. Draven could hold her foot, yes, but he couldn't silence her tongue.
What a splendid idea, a walk after dinner, she announced with defiant cheer.
She saw the shadow cross Draven's face. Draven and I will be delighted to accompany you, she added with firm sweetness.
Right, my husband.
With Draven one always had to tread lightly. Ironically, his feet rested in her lap. He would never contradict her in front of guests, she thought. She gave a scyther a smile. The girl looked more relieved and grateful. No, we will not, Draven replied with icy calm. The words froze both women.
Why not?
Arielleth insisted, smiling despite feeling watched by Ardgar. Draven returned her smile, but with eyes of steel. In that instant she knew that, if he could, he would have thrown her out the window without a shred of remorse. He hated being defied. And yet, she thought stubbornly, I'll keep doing it anyway. Because I wish to speak with you, in private, after dinner. Speak about what? She frowned. About men and horses. Emric stifled a laugh, and Garin outright exploded. Arielleth glared at them, then turned back to Draven. She didn't believe his excuse one bit. The message was clear, he would exact revenge for having challenged him. She sought a sharp retort, but none would spare her from further humiliation. Perhaps it was wise not to provoke him. She tried to turn, forgetting her foot was still trapped in his lap. Garin had to hold her again, to prevent her from falling. Draven of course noticed, and his eyes glinted with amusement. Ardgar also smiled, he understood the game between them perfectly. With Draven's permission, said the Baron, I have a gift for you, a scyther. For me? Oh, I couldn't accept it, though I thank you, Baron.
What have you brought her?
Garin asked bluntly. An instrument, Ardgar replied. A psaltery. Mariellune had one, Garin recalled, looking at Arielleth, but she got very little out of it. Thank God she took it when she married, one song made us grit our teeth. He looked at the Baron. A noble gesture, Ardgar, but here it would only gather dust. A scyther doesn't know how to play it, and God forbid Mariellune appears to give lessons. Arielleth knows how to play, a scyther rushed to add, remembering the nights her friend had played for her uncle. And she will teach me, right? Of course, Arielleth smiled. It's very thoughtful of you, Baron. I truly thank you, Isaitha added.
Shall I fetch it then?
Ardgar asked, glancing at Draven. Draven nodded. Ardgar smiled. Isaitha, too. Arielleth let out a resigned sigh. I'll get it, announced the Baron. From the corridor he joked, perhaps we can convince Lady Arielleth to play before the walk, if Draven's talk about men and horses can wait. Draven's laugh rang through the hall before Ardgar disappeared. Garin stood. Where are you going? Emric asked. To fetch another chair for Arielleth. This one insists on throwing her to the floor. Arielleth turned very slowly toward Draven, ready to throw him out the window if he spoke. A scyther celebrated the idea of hearing the psaltery. Any excuse to delay the walk with Overgaard was a blessing. Please, Arielleth, play something for us. Oh, Scyther. I don't think it's a good idea. So eager to be alone with me. Draven whispered. Arielleth turned, indignant. He smiled boldly, flaring his nostrils, and capped it with a wink. He broke bread while she looked at him, stunned, until she realized her foot was no longer in his lap. How long had it been exposed? She yanked it away sharply.
What if I sing like a frog and embarrass you? She challenged.
I could never be embarrassed by you, Draven replied calmly. The tenderness of the phrase disarmed her. You are my wife, he added. Nothing in you could embarrass me. And why? She whispered. Because I chose you. That is a fact. Although, if you keep treating me like a fool, I will smash Ositha's gift over your head, she cut in. And leave you on the floor. Arielleth startled herself. Draven, unflinching, took her hand.
Stop touching me, he murmured.
She glanced around. The Wulfsen laughed among themselves, distracted.
No, he whispered.
She looked at him again, boiling with indignation.
I don't like it this way, Draven.
Of course you do. When you are in my arms, you like everything. You moan and beg me. Arielleth immediately covered his mouth, burning to the tips of her ears. Draven let out a deep laugh that filled the hall. Emric and Garin asked what was happening. For a moment it seemed he might tell. She held her breath. She exhaled in relief when he merely shrugged and changed the subject. He's infuriating, and yet I wouldn't trade a second of this for anything. Chapter 54. Penelope wove hope, Ulysses wove paths. Both spun the same destiny. In that instant, Arielleth saw a scyther nervously smooth her sleeves and tuck a strand of hair behind her ear. Then she understood. Good heavens, how blind I've been. A scyther wanted to look beautiful for Overgaard. She was fixing herself just for him, with a shyness so sweet it tugged at the heart. And in watching them, Arielleth realized that Overgaard was not indifferent. The way he looked at her was a silent song. Her heart softened at the living desire between them. She even felt a flicker of sympathy for the Baron. Then concern returned. A scyther only wanted to stay with her family, and Draven had promised her that. And now it was starting to get tangled.
What's with that frown?
Garin asked. Life gets complicated when we leave childhood behind, Arielleth replied.
We can't be children forever, Emric added with a gesture that made her smile.
I bet you were a perpetually disgruntled child, she teased. Emric, bewildered, prompted her laughter. I hardly remember my childhood, he admitted, but I remember Garin. The three of us always got into trouble. And you, Arielleth? Garin asked. Did you cause chaos too? She shook her head. Never. I was a quiet child, incapable of doing wrong. Draven and his brothers burst out laughing. She was offended, until she realized they had painted her as a saint.
Well, I had some flaws, she mumbled.
You? Never, Emric replied. Arielleth blushed, uncomfortable with so much attention, and sought Draven. Don't embarrass her, he scolded. Tell us one of your flaws, Scyther requested. As a child, I was very clumsy. Ridiculously clumsy. No one doubted it. At that moment Overgaard returned with the psaltery. The instrument gleamed in the firelight. Arielleth felt a pang as she saw Ositha's fingers brush its strings. Father Brandulf should bless it, Scyther commented. Tomorrow during Mass, Garin said. Draven stood, signaling the end of dinner. Everyone moved toward the hearth. Arielleth waited until she was turned away, and bent down to retrieve a lost shoe. Firm hands lifted her. Draven waved the errant shoe in front of her. Why are you looking at me like that? she asked before he seated her on the edge of the table to fit the shoe himself. I can do it myself, she protested. I'm looking at you like this because you mock me, and I don't like it. Oh really? He murmured, not moving away. His hands lingered on her hips too long. Arielleth felt her breath catch.
Not when your mockery is so obvious.
You're like a blade of grass in winter, cold, rigid. He drew her gently closer, brushing against her. And now you bend like grass in summer. Draven smiled, amused. I've never been compared to a stalk before. Now tell me the truth. No evasions. Evasions, she indignantly replied.
I don't like it when you're kind.
I prefer your bad temper. She held his gaze. And I'll break my neck if I keep looking at you like this. He looked at her, incredulous.
You don't want me to be kind?
No. And why the devil not? Arielleth closed her eyes. She didn't want to say it, but she could no longer avoid it. You won't leave until I answer, Draven promised.
And I won't laugh.
You would. I didn't laugh when you called me a stalk, he replied. I won't now. She sighed, defeated. When you're kind, it makes me want to love you. Happy. Draven, yes. Very much. But Arielleth only felt a knot in her throat. And then you would break my heart, right? She whispered. I will always protect your heart, he said, with a smile that was both challenge and promise. She huffed, and he could no longer contain himself. He kissed her, ardent, inevitable.
For heaven's sake, Draven!
Emric roared. We're waiting for Arielleth to play the psaltery. Draven exhaled against her lips and pulled back, dragging his thumb across her trembling mouth. I forgot we weren't alone. Me too, she stammered. He guided her to a chair. This is yours, Arielleth indicated. He obeyed. Emric brought another for her. Ardgar handed her the psaltery. Her hands trembled, she hated being the center of all eyes. It's been ages since I sang, she warned. And I've never had proper instruction. I'm sure you were magnificent to them, Isaitha said. Oh, they thought so, but they were all quite deaf. Draven leaned forward, imposing silence. Arielleth feared she was keeping them waiting too long. I could sing a Paschal hymn in Latin, she suggested.
One that speaks of blades of grass?
Draven asked. Arielleth blinked, surprised. Draven smiled. A winter stalk breaks under the weight of ice, she said softly. In summer it bends and survives.
What are you talking about?
Garen asked, puzzled. A sad song, Draven replied. About predictability, said Draven and Arielleth in unison. Sing something about Polyphemus, Emric requested. Who is Polyphemus? Ardgar asked, intrigued. A one-eyed giant, Emric explained, looking at her knowingly. The chief of the Cyclopes, Arielleth clarified. Do you know the story of Odysseus? Some fragments, Emric said, admitting that he had heard all of them from her in the midst of fevered nights. Isaitha interjected, radiant. Ardgar, did you know Arielleth knows incredible stories? And in her excitement, she even brushed his hand. I've never heard of this. Odysseus, Ardgar admitted, uncomfortable.
How is that possible?
Arielleth smiled at his irritation.
There's no shame in admitting it, she said.
Have you perhaps heard of Leofrid of Ardenscar? The monk? Ardgar asked. Arielleth nodded and sought Ositha's gaze, certain the young girl had never heard of the man. Leofrid lived long ago, Isaitha, almost a century back, I think. He left his monastery and traveled to the lands of Hispania. When he returned to France, he led the cathedral school in Reims. That was when he began sharing with his students the stories he had translated himself, tales by a very ancient poet named Homer, who told of an invincible warrior, Odysseus. Leofrid moved those stories from Greek and Latin so they wouldn't be lost. Do you think Leofrid and Homer were friends? Isaitha asked, genuinely innocent. No dear, Arielleth answered sweetly. Homer lived in antiquity, in a distant realm called Greece. He died centuries before Leofrid was born. But his stories survived in monasteries, even if some scholars of the church doubted them. When I tell them, I mean no disrespect. I only know, it would be foolish to take them literally. Everyone seemed captivated. Arielleth looked at Draven, he inclined his head giving permission, and she began plucking the psaltery. At first the strings gave a few trembling notes. But the ballad of Odysseus before the Cyclopes soon commanded the full attention of the room. Arielleth kept her eyes on the instrument. She imagined herself sitting beside her uncle Fredrin, singing to him. That fantasy was enough. Her hands stopped trembling, and her voice rose with strength, as if the story were born in that very moment. The entire room fell under the spell of the poem. Draven thought his wife's voice was an enchantment, a perfect reflection of the delicate, mysterious creature he had for a wife. He, a man little given to dreams, leaned back in his chair with a rare expression, peace. At Emmeric's request, Arielleth resumed the story where Odysseus' men are captured by Polyphemus. The one-eyed giant, hungry for human flesh, locked them in a cave whose entrance he blocked with a massive boulder. But he also kept his goats there, so each morning he had to move the rock to let them graze. It was then that Odysseus devised his clever plan. He blinded the giant with a glowing beam and taught his men to cling under the bellies of the beasts. Polyphemus, blind, groped the air for the fugitives, but his enormous arm reached too high to catch them as they escaped clinging to the goats. The ruse had worked. When Arielleth finished the song, the group asked for another story. It was clever of Odysseus to say his name was nobody, Garin commented. Indeed, Ardgar added. When Polyphemus began to roar in pain, the other Cyclopes came to the cave entrance to ask who had hurt him. The Baron laughed. And when they heard that nobody was to blame, they left him to his fate. Laughter filled the hall. Arielleth smiled, radiant at their enthusiasm. Then she looked back at Draven. He watched the fire with a serene expression, as if deep satisfaction filled him. His profile, outlined by the flames, was a harsh, noble beauty. Arielleth paused, feeling something warm and ancient envelop her. And then she understood. He reminds me of Odysseus. Draven was like that warrior who had populated her childhood fantasies, her imaginary protector, her invisible confidant. As a little girl she had entrusted him with her fears, her hours of solitude. She had imagined that one day Odysseus would come for her, that he would tear her from Morhollow's grasp and love her with fierce devotion. As she grew into a woman, she had tucked those daydreams into a corner of her soul, and until this moment she had almost forgotten them. But there, looking at him in the firelight, she realized that her dream had taken flesh. Draven was Odysseus. Her lover. Her guardian. The man who had rescued her. Good heavens! I am hopelessly in love with him. Chapter 55. A love that defied both steel and fear. Arielleth barely heard Ositha's voice. What's wrong? Do you feel unwell? The girls sprang up to steady her. Arielleth had gone so pale that Ositha feared she would faint, and only her arm prevented the psaltery from shattering on the floor. I'm fine, murmured Arielleth, though her legs refused to obey, just tired. Don't worry. But it wasn't tiredness. It was the newly awakened and terrifying certainty that she had fallen in love with Draven. That revelation still made her tremble. Do you feel up to another song? Asked Ositha, immediately regretting it. She desperately needed to delay the walk with Ardgar, and if Arielleth helped, she could find a way to make it up to her. After all, she had brought her breakfast in bed that very morning. Arielleth understood her distress, but no matter how hard she searched for a way out for her, she found none. When Ardgar approached, Arielleth greeted him with a kind smile. You chose a magnificent instrument for Ositha. One can see the care, Baron. Draven chose carefully as well, he replied, enigmatic. Arielleth didn't know what to make of that comment. Emric and Garin then began praising her performance, and she, overwhelmed by the attention, blushed like a young girl. The Wulfsen were strange, they complimented with a frankness that disarmed. No one had ever called her beautiful before meeting them, and they said it as if they truly meant it.
"You'll make me vain in the end," she joked timidly.
Then she noticed something. Draven hadn't said a word. Had he liked her song? He wasn't behaving as usual. The kiss he had given her in front of everyone, the way he had teased her during dinner. If she didn't know him so well, she might have thought he had a sense of humor. A ridiculous idea, of course. Overgaard took Ositha's hand to lead her out of the hall. The girl kept looking back, pleading for help with her eyes. "Don't take too long, Ositha," Arielleth called after her. "Or you'll catch a chill."
It was all she could do for her.
Garen and Emric left as well, and suddenly the hall fell silent. Just Draven and her. Arielleth smoothed her skirt to occupy her hands, longing to go up to her room and think in peace. There was too much to sort out in her mind and in her heart. She felt Draven's gaze, firm as a hand on the nape of her neck. "Do you wish to talk now about men and horses?" she asked, ironic. "Or after your bath in the lake?"
What? He frowned. "You said it yourself."
"Don't you remember?" Draven smiled, and that smile disarmed her. "Come closer, my wife. I'll explain." She obeyed, intrigued. "You're behaving very strangely, Draven," she accused softly as she approached.
"You seem relaxed."
"Nothing like yourself." She bit her lip, studying him. Then she raised her hand and placed the back of it on his forehead.
"You don't have a fever," she pronounced.
Draven thought she said it with a hint of disappointment. Before she could pull away, he took her by the waist and settled her in his lap. Arielleth arranged herself with awkward dignity, hands folded over her knees. "Is something frightening you?" he asked, caressing her lips with his thumb. "Yes. You frighten me. Because you've never been like this with me." She sighed, brushed a strand of hair aside, and inadvertently nudged his chin with her elbow. She murmured an apology, blushing at her eternal clumsiness. Draven only nodded, resigned.
"You don't sing like a frog," he said suddenly.
Arielleth smiled, feeling that this was the most precious compliment he had ever given her. "Thank you, Draven. Now tell me about this thing with men and horses." He slid his hand down her neck to rest on her shoulders, and a shiver ran through her. He drew her gently against his chest. "Men develop a deep bond with their horses," Draven began, his voice as warm as the hearth. "We depend on them. In battle, an undisciplined horse can cost you your life." Arielleth yawned, comforted by the deep sound of his voice. She closed her eyes without realizing it. "You, my wife, took my best steed," he continued. "I should be furious. And I am. You've ruined the Destria. I intend to deliver you to Silas, but first I want your apologies for ruining my horse and your gratitude for the gift." No response. Draven frowned at her. He lifted her chin gently. She was asleep, utterly unaware. Logic dictated that he should wake her out of discipline, but instead, Draven brushed her lips with a kiss. She, still with closed eyes, curled closer and wrapped her arms around his neck. Emric appeared at the door. He raised an eyebrow at the scene.
"Has she fallen asleep?"
"My lecture exhausted her," Draven replied dryly. Emric laughed, though lowered his voice, remembering she was asleep. "Don't wake her. She's exhausted. By the way, dinner was magnificent. Only because Arielleth demands perfection in everything. I ate 4 pieces of pie. Did you know she gave Wenleth and the others the recipe?" "The others?" murmured Draven. "The servants. They are as loyal to her as we are." Draven raised an eyebrow. "And you, Emric? Are you loyal to her as well?" "Like a sister," he replied without hesitation. "I'd give my life to protect her." Draven smiled faintly. "I don't doubt it." They then spoke of Overgaard and the tensions with Morhollow, the king still in Normandy, of alliances and threats. Emric was willing to stay as long as necessary. They even spoke of the Falcon estate, that abandoned land on the far south. Draven looked at him with new seriousness. I want it to be yours, he said. If the king grants us permission, I'll give it to you. Build your fortress there. You've earned it. For the first time, Emric was speechless. The possibility, owning land, being master of his own domain, moved him to his core.
Why me? He whispered.
Arielleth, Draven replied. A reflection of hers led me here. They spoke of restless kings and discontented sons, of ancient laws and quiet ambitions. They spoke of Henry, the king's younger brother, and his enigmatic invitation to Ardgar. If there's rebellion, Draven said, I will fight for the king. I owe him honor. Emric nodded silently. Much remained to consider. One final subject lingered. Tell me about Garin, Draven asked. Does he still think he loves Arielleth? Emric sighed. He suffered a bit, but I think it's over now. She calls him brother, and that cools any folly. I'm surprised you noticed. Garin wears his thoughts on his face, grunted Draven. Didn't you see him reach for his sword during the ceremony? He thought he was forcing Arielleth to marry. You forced her, Emric laughed. And yet yes, she saw, and that's why she accepted the wedding so quickly. She feared you more than her own uncertainty. Draven let slip a crooked smile. My Arielleth will always protect whoever she believes weaker than herself, he said quietly, gazing at his wife's sleeping face. Even from me. Chapter 56.
The heart that brought him back to life.
Draven continued stroking his wife's back, perhaps without realizing it, under Emric's amused gaze. Do you want us to leave? Asked Emric quietly. On the contrary, Draven replied. If we got up now, Arielleth would be angry with me. She doesn't understand that your loyalty extends to Greymarsh as well. She fears I might want to keep you and Garin bound to my will forever. Emric snorted a laugh. Your wife has peculiar ideas, yet she has changed our lives. Yours as well. Even if we've never said it aloud, she has united this family. Draven did not respond, though the shadow of a smile stretched his lips. Emric stood, ready to leave. It's a shame, you know, he said from the doorway. A shame for what? Asked Draven.
That I didn't capture her.
Draven let out a slow smile.
No, brother.
It was a blessing from heaven. If you had taken her, perhaps I would have killed you to get her back. At that moment, Arielleth opened her eyes. She had heard the last words. She sat up gently and gave her husband a still sleepy smile.
What were you going to steal from your brother? She murmured, rubbing her hair as Draven deftly avoided her elbow.
Nothing that concerns you, my wife. A lord should always share what is his with his brothers, she scolded him sweetly. Emric laughed as he left, delighted with the lesson. Then the door opened again, and a scyther burst in like a whirlwind. Upon seeing Arielleth, she broke into tears. Ardgar insists that our agreement still stands, she sobbed.
What am I to do?
That man still wants to marry me. Arielleth leapt from Draven's lap, and a scyther threw herself into her arms like a trembling vine. Draven stood with an exasperated sigh. That question should be asked of me, a scyther, he growled. He caught Arielleth's arm and guided her toward the entrance, ignoring that a scyther still clung to her.
Let's go.
We can't abandon your sister in this state, protested Arielleth, feeling herself pulled as if in a tug of war. And Draven, you're tearing my arm off. But the situation worsened when Ardgar entered the hall. With him there, it was impossible for Draven to escape his responsibility. Before the Baron could speak, Draven asked directly. Do you still wish to take a scyther as your wife?
Yes, Ardgar replied, his voice defiant.
Draven clenched his jaw. I gave my word that she could remain here as long as she wished. Ardgar's face showed irritation, and for a moment Draven had to suppress a growl.
It was a mistake, he admitted to everyone's surprise.
I should not have promised such a thing. Silence fell. Arielleth looked at him with wide eyes. He leaned toward her. Your insistence on truth is beginning to rub off on me, he whispered.
Now be silent and trust me.
She nodded, smiling with a tenderness that softened the hardness of his features. When Draven turned his gaze back to Ardgar, he still smiled. A scyther, he ordered with iron calm. Stop screaming like a hen and repeat exactly the promise I made you. A scyther separated from Arielleth, wiping her cheeks. You said that as long as I lived, I could remain under this roof if it was my desire. Ardgar stepped forward but froze at Draven's gaze. And what promise did I make you, Ardgar? Draven asked. With the king's blessing, you promised me her hand, said the Baron, irritated. Emric intervened, unable to contain himself. And how on earth do you intend to fulfill both? Draven ignored him. Ardgar, the word given to a scyther obliges me to respect her will. If you wish to change it, that's your affair. Ardgar blinked, puzzled.
What are you trying to say? That you are welcome in my house, Draven replied.
Stay here as long as you need. Surprise gave way to an arrogant gesture. Ardgar turned to a scyther. Then I will stay with you, a scyther. As long as it takes, until you understand that I want to take your hand.
How dare you, she burst out.
And though she shouted with fury enough to be heard from the wall, Arielleth saw no fear in her eyes. Only indignation. A scyther stepped toward Ardgar, angrily lifting the hem of her skirt. You'll be old and bent before I change my mind, Ardgar. I think you underestimate my resources, a scyther, he replied with an insolent smile. You are a commoner, she spat, and she left the hall with a slam. What is a commoner? Asked Ardgar, confused. Another word from Arielleth, Emric answered. As despicable as Polyphemus? Emric joked. No, admitted Arielleth. At least a scyther values you more than Arielleth valued me when I arrived, Emric laughed. Arielleth opened her mouth, not understanding what he meant, but Draven took the moment to wish her good night and drag her out of the hall. They didn't speak until they reached the door to his chambers. When Draven opened it, Arielleth was surprised. Everything that had been in the tower was now here, her chairs, her blankets, her tapestries hanging over the hearth. Morwenna appeared at that moment.
The bath is ready for the lady, as you ordered, my lord.
When the door closed, Arielleth took a deep breath. Draven, I cannot bathe in front of you. Please go to the lake while I have already seen you naked, my wife, he interrupted, letting his belt drop onto a chair. He began undoing the ties of her dress with skilled hands. But always under the blankets and... Her voice broke. Come now, get into the bathtub before the water cools. You swim in an icy lake, she protested, as he slowly lifted her dress.
Why do you do it?
Do you like that cold? She tried to distract him, but Draven seemed capable of answering without stopping his hands. I don't enjoy it, he admitted. But it strengthens body and spirit. He knelt to remove her boots and stockings, and she held her breath as she felt his fingers tracing her legs. Arielleth crossed her arms to cover herself, overwhelmed by his closeness. He straightened and with unexpected gentleness moved her hands aside. His warm palms rested on her skin and his thumbs traced slow circles. Arielleth felt her heart racing. If I kiss you now, murmured Draven, brushing her forehead, I won't let you make it to the bath. I see the passion in your eyes. And you feel how much I desire you. She nodded, barely a whisper. I desire you. Always. With visible effort, she turned toward the bathtub. Draven averted his gaze, so as not to give in to the impulse to carry her to the bed. He had decided to be patient tonight. He wanted tenderness, not urgency. Soft words that would finally lead her to admit what he had already confessed. That she loved him.